Hey everyone, so glad you're joining me today. We are diving into an explainer that honestly, it completely flips the script on traditional self-help. I mean, if you've ever felt just totally exhausted by this constant, relentless pressure to be perfect, or if you're feeling burned out by our culture's obsession with these quick fix, 10-step programs that, let's be real, never actually seem to work, well, you are absolutely in the right place. So let's just get right into it, because what we're unpacking today is a massive shift in how we view ourselves and our day-to-day lives.
To kick things off, we really need to look at this totally fascinating dilemma. Why is the how-to so incredibly alluring when, frankly, we already know how to do most of the things we struggle with? I mean, think about it for a second. We know how to eat healthy, right? Some of us can practically recite the glycemic index or count diet points in our sleep. We know how to manage our money, and we generally know how to take care of our emotional needs. And yet, even with more access to science and books and information than ever before in human history, we're still struggling. We're standing in the exact same spot, just longing for more joy and connection. So, why? Well, it's because we almost completely ignore the obstacles, the real, messy, incredibly human feelings that get right in the way of actually doing what we know is best.
And that brings us to the absolute foundation of our explainer today, the groundbreaking work of Dr. Brené Brown, specifically her incredible book, The Gifts of Imperfection. Now, what's absolutely crucial to remember here is that this is not your typical, fluffy, feel-good advice. Dr. Brown is a researcher first and foremost, and this entire framework is built on what's called grounded theory. That basically means it was developed from years of rigorous academic research, literally thousands of pieces of data, and countless interviews. She went looking for how people actually cultivate courage, compassion, and connection, and she built us a map based entirely on real human experiences.
So here is our roadmap for today. First up, we'll break down the wholehearted concept. Second, we're going to look at what gets in the way, specifically the perfectionism trap. Third, we'll explore the 10 guideposts. Fourth, we'll learn a practical tool called Dig Deep. And finally, we'll wrap up with how all of this sparks a quiet, grassroots revolution.
All right, let's start with part one, the wholehearted concept. And we're going way beyond the buzzwords here.
So what exactly is wholehearted living? Well, it's really about engaging in our lives from a deep place of worthiness. It means actively cultivating courage, compassion, and connection. We hear these big, gauzy concept words like love and authenticity tossed around all the time, right? But this framework actually makes them actionable. Living wholeheartedly means waking up in the morning and genuinely thinking to yourself, you know what, no matter what gets done today, and no matter how much is left undone, I am enough. And it means going to bed at night recognizing that yes, you are imperfect, and sure, you might be feeling vulnerable or afraid, but none of that changes the absolute truth that you are also brave, and you are entirely worthy of love and belonging.
Moving on to part two, what gets in the way? Specifically, we're talking about the perfectionism trap.
Okay, so if wholehearted living sounds this amazing, why on earth is it so incredibly difficult to actually achieve? Well, think about your average day. From the second we wake up to the minute our head hits the pillow, we are just bombarded with overwhelming societal and media expectations. We're constantly being told exactly what we should look like, how we're supposed to parent, how our houses should be decorated, and exactly what we should weigh. The source material actually makes this great point. Trying to avoid these media messages is literally like holding your breath to avoid air pollution. I mean, it's just not going to happen. We are constantly comparing this polished image of who we are supposed to be against our actual, messy, authentic selves. And that comparison, it creates this massive gap that just gets completely filled with self-doubt and perfectionism. Author Anna Quindlen really hits the nail on the head here. She says, the thing that is really hard and really amazing is giving up on being perfect and beginning the work of becoming yourself. I just love that. Letting go of perfectionism isn't just some nice, optional idea. It is a mandatory barrier that we absolutely have to dismantle if we ever want to cultivate real resilience and joy.
Which brings us to part three, embracing the 10 guideposts.
Let's zero in on a specific example. Guidepost number 2, which is all about cultivating self-compassion by letting go of perfectionism. Dr. Brown shares this fantastic little anecdote in the source material about a web-based book club she hosted on her blog. A reader actually emailed her and said, "Hey, I don't really have shame issues, but I definitely struggle with perfectionism." And then she innocently asked, "Shame and perfectionism aren't related, are they?" Ah, man. The reality is, they are deeply, intimately intertwined.
Perfectionism isn't about striving for excellence. It's almost always just a heavy shield we carry around to protect ourselves from the shame of judgment. So to really practice these guideposts, we have to willingly put that shield down.
Now, when you take a step back and look at all 10 of these guideposts, you'll start to notice a really clear pattern. They're all entirely about shifting away from those heavy societal pressures we talked about. Take Guidepost 7, for example. That one is all about letting go of exhaustion as a status symbol and ditching productivity as a measure of self-worth. I mean, how often do we catch ourselves bragging about how little sleep we got, almost like it's some sort of badge of honor? Or look at Guidepost 10. Letting go of needing to be cool and always in control so we can actually just laugh and sing and dance. Collectively, practicing these things daily shifts us away from that paralyzing self-doubt and points us directly toward a life of genuine meaning and resilience.
All right, moving right along to part 4, how to dig deep. This is our actionable methodology. Now, theory is great, right? But real life happens in the trenches. The author uses this really specific acronym whenever she finds herself in a situation that triggers her vulnerability or that awful sense of not being good enough. She calls it dig deep. Because look, meaningful change in our lives doesn't happen when we're sitting around feeling comfortable. It happens in those risky, super uncomfortable moments where we have to consciously, actively choose authenticity over making other people happy.
So how do we actually do this? Well, first, you get deliberate. When you're staring down vulnerability, you have to get completely deliberate with your intentions. Don't shrink yourself just to make other people comfortable. Second, get inspired. Courage is totally contagious. Look to the people around you who are being brave with their lives. As writer Catherine Senner notes in the text, you really have to be brave with your own life so that others can be brave with theirs. And finally, the third step, get going. Make authenticity your absolute #1 priority. Think about it. If being liked is your main goal, you're going to be in trouble. But if being real is your goal, you'll rarely feel shame, even if your feelings do get a little bumped and bruised along the way.
And that brings us to our final section, part 5, the Wholehearted Revolution.
Dr. Brown makes a really fascinating point here. Despite where this book might physically sit on the shelf at your local bookstore, she isn't entirely sure this is actually a self-help framework at all. Instead, she frames it as an invitation to join a wholehearted revolution. It's this small, quiet, grassroots movement that literally sparks to life the very moment any one of us decides to stand up and say, hey, my story matters because I matter. Honestly, taking to the streets with our messy, imperfect, stretch-marked, wild, and wonderful lives, that is a deeply rebellious act. It's a movement entirely fueled by the ultimate freedom that washes over us when we finally, once and for all, stop pretending that everything is okay when it just isn't.
I want to leave you with this final, really provocative thought. Whenever you're feeling afraid of change or you're terrified to embrace your own imperfections, you have to stop and answer this one question. What is the greater risk? Letting go of what people think? Or letting go of how I feel, what I believe, and who I am? I'm just going to let that linger for a second. Think about your answer. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Now go out there, dig deep, and join the revolution.